Death of the author.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was scared and lonely because she lived in a world full of monsters.
A little ashamed to admit this is sort of later in life. I was house sitting. I was catching up on wrestling. I hadn't watched in such a long time. So I bought a bunch of wrestling DVDs. One of them being The Twisted, Disturbed Life of Kane. And not only are the matches, but also the wraparound segments were maskless Kane. The way that he was just so deliciously evil, and he just breathed it. Kind of felt like, kind of awakened something. But it made me want to be a wrestler, as silly as that sounds. I was introduced to wrestling via an episode of Baywatch, the Bash at the Beach one. Kind of inspired me, seeing Hulk Hogan lift that plastic or styrofoam boulder off of that poor innocent person, and you saw the Rock bobbing in the ocean before he picks it up. Even with that, I still bought the kayfabe of this larger-than-life superhero character in fleshy form. That wasn't just a comic. It wasn't a superhero film. It wasn't a cartoon. This was somebody I could see live. Learning about wrestling being this sort of combat and theater. It's also this marriage between acting and combat in a way that's just beautiful. Kind of fell out with wrestling because when it came to watching the women's wrestling, the ones that I had been shown of at the time was the bra and panties matches or the mud wrestling matches. Nobody showed me anything of Chyna, Lita, or Victoria. I have a feeling that if somebody showed me any of those three, I probably would have watched it more regularly. I probably would have had that more typical, yeah, I watched this growing up, and I probably would have gone into wrestling earlier in life.
Well, if it isn't the great hero himself, Rebel Storm.
Directly to her. Yeah, Rebel Storm may have hesitated a bit, and it's costing him now. Heidi absolutely throwing around Rebel Storm.
I would say Heidi's evil, but it's more that she's been considered a monster for so long and has been compared to a devil or a demon that eventually has just thrown up her hands and accepted it. If I'm going to be referred to as such, I might as well take the mantle and may as well follow the rules while I'm at it. Yeah, sorry, I like to get into character. As you can probably tell from my promo style and my presentation, I looked at a lot of Disney villains. Oh, my favorite Disney villain is Professor Rattigan from The Great Mouse Detective. Not only because he's voiced by the oh so honey voice of Vincent Price, but also he's somebody who views himself as someone of high society, a criminal genius, but he's a rat, he's not a mouse, and anytime someone brings that up, he gets so angry, so touchy about that. And he has this hidden rage that kind of bubbles at certain times. He just goes full monster. That sort of gave inspiration to as Heidi is more in a match. She takes off the vest or like rips off the jabot that I'm wearing. And the further along the match I go, the more deranged I look, the more haggard I look, the more I really am wanting to tear them apart. And because I mentioned Disney villains, but there's a few that I take inspiration from. Hey, was that more serial killer, maskless type of character? Undertaker being an obvious one. Early Heidi attire looked very Undertaker-ish, albeit a bit more Dickensian. I tried to avoid it. Funny enough, I started her off as just a mad woman. But the more people wanted her to have powers, the more she became powerful and powerful. She's just this nightmare. Covered in eyes, invades dreams. There's also Bray Wyatt, or the Fiend. I do love Bray Wyatt. The amount of attention to detail with his character work, especially with The Fiend. I love the fact that The Fiend was sort of like a more modern take on that sort of horror character. Originally, I was going to have Heidi have a children's TV show, but then I saw the Firefly Funhouse and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to scrap that. Especially since nothing I do is going to be anywhere near as good as that. The biggest thing is, it gives me hope that wrestling is one of the very few places that monsters can truly thrive. Plunging to tear them apart. Let's see, my dad was kind of against it because he was worried about me getting injured. Like the infamous, was it Sid Vicious who tried to do like that jumping leg snap? I was already aware of what I was getting myself into. Animation and just drawing was sort of a way to help me contextualize the world, and that is not what I was looking for. There was always like something that my parents weren't quite telling me. I was never properly diagnosed, especially since it was the 80s. Knowledge about how autism affects women was not really there. What I did, why it took so long for me to get diagnosed, was a thing called masking, which is essentially you observe other people and you put on this persona of normalcy, or at least as close to normal as possible. To mask your symptoms, though sometimes the mask isn't perfect. You do feel like you're an alien or some creature that's parading around in a human suit. When I was living with my dad and we found the old assessment paperwork, and I wanted to know what the heck that was about, and he's like, oh yeah, we got you assessed for autism. We decided to put you in a regular school. Like, what? Growing up was confusing because I didn't know what my wiring was like. I couldn't really relate to people, or at least I tried to, but it never quite came off right. My parents tried to support me as best they can. There's been some rocky moments. That sounds like it can be a hindrance in wrestling. And in some ways it can be, like being in an unfamiliar locker room is a little daunting at first, but if I'm with somebody I'm comfortable with and I get like a read on what the room is, then I can adapt to it pretty well. I learned to be self-sufficient. I went through high school, went through college, studied animation/art, tried to get into that field, ended up working security due to financial reasons. This was for an assignment when I was interning at Splash Entertainment. I did an assignment storyboard based off of a Disney character and a gumball machine. Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame. In fact, that was him in hell, where it's an elevator to hell. You have Funkin' Pongo, Goofy, and Pluto as Cerberus. Frollo just gets tossed out with the gargoyle head that he was clinging to when he fell into that molten iron. I studied animation and I went to Moore Park College. I went to San Jose State University, went to CSUN, finished my degree in art. I got a job at, internship / went up to a job at this place called Moonscoop. And I worked on the show 𝚠𝚠 I did storyboard revisions, and eventually I got to board an episode. That was nice. And they even based their Frankenstein doll off of her personality, off of me, because I was so shy at the time. And nice of them. With the final art, I'm going to update this. Wholesome artwork, you know, something that's very kid-friendly, not traumatizing at all.
Headlock take over. We show everybody got that for a second. And just go back up and then move on. All right, we just want to give everything just a small beat.
My early career was pretty rough. It felt like I wasn't quite ready for it. My initial mechanics were too rigid. I wasn't quite feeling, embodying that monster. There was the so-called censored articles that essentially called me out. I value them because I looked back at my old material and it was very rough. So I wanted to get better. Went to a Rise seminar, did a dark match, got some more criticism there. Best advice that I got from Joey Chaos was basically emoting with the eyes. That's where that believability comes in. Say like, oh, and we're gonna do like this lovely little thing and ha ha ha, but the eyes weren't quite there. But then I received that advice, and it is like, okay, we're going to have such grand fun, yes. I am going to take Milo's hair and I'm going to smash her face into the bloody turnbuckles, one each time. Maybe I'll grind her face into the mat until the red stops. Obviously, if I'm not going to do that, well, in my dreams.
If there's a big difference. Let me take a look at that. If I got
Hello, my nname is Kristen Bell. My gimmick name is Auntie Heidi. I've been at MPW for about 7 years. I've trained with MPW, Santino's. I've trained with Peter Avalon, trained with 𝚙𝚘𝚘𝚠, and Danny Devine, Brendan Devine. All of their help, Joey Chaos, Eli Everflight. This bizarre long journey in wrestling has been invaluable to me. It's helped me as a character, helped me with my basics, with my movements, with just being a performer and knowing that I don't have to do too much in order to be a character, to show what I can do as Heidi. And sometimes, well, actually, one of the biggest things I've learned is that sometimes less is more. When I was with Delilah Dew, I didn't do a lot of the more elaborate maneuvers, but what I did do was at the right place, the right time, and was impactful as a result.
Oh, all right, Heidi, we're gonna be ready for some questions.
Yes, what?
Do you have something on your lip?
Sorry, you wanted to hear about the Void. The Void was Heidi's creation, a place that can bring out the worst in people, something that she's... You've wanted to talk to Heidi. How do you know you haven't been talking to her this entire time?
Where is she?
They say imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery. And you have to show respect for the dead.
Are you okay? So what?
Oh my god. Can we just go away?